Hey, welcome everyone to the first Girls Right Now Salon of the 2021 year. I think I speak for a lot of people when I say that it is needed tonight. We are so excited to have our mentees here, our mentors here, and all of the wonderful people in the Girls Right Now community, whether you've been with us for a long time or you're just now joining us and just now finding out. So my name is Andrea. I'm going to briefly take you through how this evening will look, and then I'm going to pass it on to what we're all here for. So tonight we are going to be writing, we are going to be talking to each other inside of the chat, and we're going to be hearing a lovely conversation and exchange between Tracy, Sherrod, and AJ Verdelle. Proud to and excited to have the official welcome from President and Publisher of Harper One Group, Girls Right Now board member, and champion of amplifying diverse voices, Judith Kerr.
Well, thanks, Andrea. And hello, everyone. Welcome to the Voice of the New World, Starting Your Story, the first Girls Right Now Salon of the new year. I am a proud member of the Girls Right Now Board of Directors, and I couldn't be happier to be part of this incredible organization and the community of writers and readers. And thank you all so much for being here with us this evening. HarperCollins and Girls Right Now are partnering to foster connection, community, and learning between our wonderful authors and amazing community. Between our mentees and future authors from Girls Right Now. And it's wonderful to see what happens when authors have direct access to their audience and young writers have direct access to them. It's my great pleasure to introduce tonight Vice President and Editorial Director of Amistad, Tracy Sherrod, and author of The Good Negress, AJ Verdelle, two amazing women who do so much work and have so much to share with this community. Tracy joined Amistad in 2013, and her exuberance and dedication to advancing Black authors is unrivaled. Tracy has worked tirelessly to ensure the longevity of Amistad, building on history and exploring the future to guarantee its continued success, prestige, and editorial integrity. Tracy has a wonderful relationship with the Zora Neale Hurston estate, and working with them, she delivered the best-selling Barracoon and is developing the complete Hurston canon, including the new edition of Their Eyes Are Watching God, which comes out this week. Tracy is an excellent editor and has worked with and published award-winning and best-selling authors such as Steve Harvey, Jacqueline Woodson, Pamela Newcott, and Jennifer Lewis. In the last 2 years, Amistad has seen a period of great vibrancy and growth under Tracy's leadership, with 3 New York Times bestsellers in a singular year, a first for the imprint, but definitely not a last. Her authors with forthcoming titles include Miss Cecily Tyson, Sophie Williams, Barbara Chase-Ribold, Chris Stuck, and many more. And of course, tonight's guest, AJ Verdelle. AJ is an award-winning writer and teacher, and we're very lucky to have her here this evening, and I can't wait to hear her insights. Her debut novel, The Good Negress, was a finalist for the PEN Faulkner Prize, the Los Angeles Book Prize, and the IPAC Dublin Fiction Award. And she has also won multiple national prizes, including the Verdelle Award for the American Academy of Arts and Letters, the Whiting Award in Fiction, and the Bunning Institution Fellowship of the Harvard University. She teaches undergrads at Morgan State University and graduate students in an MFA program at Lesley University in Cambridge, Massachusetts. In 2021, Verdelle will publish a book about her memories of her friendship with the great writer Toni Morrison. And together, Tracy and AJ will share what it's like to work together as editor and author and how important that relationship can be. But better you hear it from them than me. So over to you, Tracy and AJ.
Thank you so much, Judith. And AJ, thank you so much for joining me. It means a lot. I admire AJ on so many levels. As a writer, as a human being, a compassionate, thoughtful human being. And so we're really thrilled to be here today, and we're going to talk about voice. And so, AJ, in your writing journey, can you tell me what voice means to you?
So hello, everybody. I'm delighted to be here and to look at all these lovely Zoom squares and the lovely faces inside the Zoom squares where I can see faces. Um, I've been teaching on Zoom for 2 semesters, just like everybody else. And so after a while, you kind of get Zoom eyes where you feel like in the cartoons where the eyeballs just hang out on like little strings. Um, but because I'm on break from school, I'm fresh tonight. And so my eyes feel secure in my head and I feel very comfortable. So I feel very lucky that this is coming during a school break. Um, I wanted to define voice first because I understood that tonight's program was about voice. And so mostly as a teacher, but also as a writer, it's important to kind of register in your mind what it is you're actually working with, sort of early in the process of working with it. So, for example, let's say you want to write about shoes, right? So, when you begin to start to write about shoes, it's good to stop and take a minute and say, okay, what do I mean by shoes? Because flip flops are really different than stilettos, which are really different than Birkenstocks, which are really different than wool bedroom shoes, which are really different than I can't remember. My sister used to know the word, but the shoes the old ladies wear that are like bedroom shoes with just a band across the top. There's a man's name that goes with them, like Clark Hudson or something. But anyway, the point is that taking a moment to register, what am I talking about? Not just the word shoes or voice, but what that generates for you, because then you go from sort of a one note to many notes that you can then play with in your writing or choose from in your writing or expand on in your writing. So that's why I thought we should define voice first. Um, and the truth of the matter is, voice is incredibly complicated because voice is so unique. It's just like nobody can fool you when they come into your bedroom and pretend to be your mother or your husband or your girlfriend or your daughter. If they come in and say, hey, mom, and it's not your daughter, you're going to know instantly because voice is so unique. And voice in writing is the same. It's extremely unique. And the reason or the way you get to voice, given that it's so unique, is that you've got to turn in on yourself. You got to have that moment that I'm talking about where you actually say, what is it about my work that makes it my work and no one else's work? And that's really what voice is. It's what makes your work yours and no one else's. So if you go back to the way I started this conversation, where I was talking about, I taught on Zoom for so long that I felt like I was in the cartoons and my eyeballs were like on little ribbons or pieces of gum coming out of my head. That is something that only I would say. You've never heard anyone else say that. And I'm not saying you only hear me say it because I'm in any way anything except just me. So it's an image that comes out of me. And because I'm experienced enough as a writer and as a person to value what comes only out of me, then I have a chance at having a voice. To the extent that I don't value what comes only out of me, so I'm imitating something my daughter says. My daughter has this Spanish expression that she's using currently to say, that's enough. So she says it in Spanish because then she can get away with telling her mother, that's enough, right? Because it takes me a minute to figure out what she's saying, right? That's uniquely her. If I tried to imitate her, I can't even remember the expression, so I wouldn't do such a good job. I remember once in my class, my kids were all saying fleek. It was about 5 years ago. And finally I had to say, what is fleek? Well, if I had chosen to use the word fleek without really knowing what it meant, I'd be imitating my students and it wouldn't be me. So the idea about voice is you have to recognize that you need confidence. You need to understand what it means to be uniquely you. So you're uniquely you, you have enough confidence to get it on the page. And you understand that voice comes from habit. That is, what is uniquely you, you've got to try to express over and over again. And then eventually, that's how you get to it. So habit, confidence, and being uniquely yourself. That is how I define voice. And I encourage everybody to go back to sort of the idea that I was explaining about how you can never be fooled about the voices of your intimates. Nobody can come talk to you and pretend to be your daughter or your husband or your partner because their voice is so unique. And that is the same way that developing a voice as a writer or an artist works. You have to understand that it's about your uniqueness. And so you just keep communicating. You keep looking for the words to say what only you have to say. How's that?
Yes, very, very, very good, AJ. And then as an editor, we think of voice most definitely in search of the unique understanding of an individual, but also to make sure that it corresponds with the story being told. For instance, if you were telling a story about a Western, you wouldn't necessarily use urban language. You'd use more cowboy language, whatever that language is, but that sort of thing. And so what AJ and I have done, we have pulled together some first lines from various pieces of work. And I would love it once we put these lines up on the screen and we go through them one at a time to determine what we learn about voice and the story being told based on the first line of several books. And so, and then while we're doing that, if someone, in this virtual room knows what book it comes from and who wrote it, that'd be great. Then we'll give you a prize. I don't know what the prize is going to be. Andrea may determine what the prize is. Well, you're going to get an Amistad book. That's what the prize will be. And maybe a complimentary copy of AJ's book. But we'll see. So we'll see how it goes. If people can recognize and what these words are. And okay, so I think I pulled this up. No, I don't think I do it that way. Okay, 1 second. I need to share my screen. Share. And then here we go. Here are the first lines.
So how about I read one, the first one?
That'd be great.
Okay, so the first one says, my grandmother, Patience, I don't know how to say it, Ibua Obaski, died under suspicious circumstances. My grandmother, Patience, I'm going to leave off her 2 hard names, died under suspicious circumstances. So Tracy has talked about how the voice has to fit the story. And certainly as a writer, for a first line, you want to sort of figure out what you can set up for the reader as quickly as possible. So can anybody, I guess, in the chat, tell us what this sets up? And if you know the book, you can put it there. Mystery. Absolutely true. The mystery comes from suspicious circumstances. So that's a great answer. The other thing it sets up is possibly what is the relationship of the narrator to losing their grandmother in this way. Is it something that they're going to mourn? Yes. Reflection of past events, right? The past event is that the grandmother has died. So the writer is trying to get you to wonder, what is this narrator going to do? Because their grandmother has not just died, but it's been sort of not a good, it's not like she died in her bed in her sleep, right? So the writer is trying to get you to be interested in, what is this narrator going to do?
And does the grandmother's name give us any insight into who this is or where it may be set?
I'm looking to the chat to see if anyone says anything before I start running my mouth. Africa.
Yes.
Yep.
Did that come from the chat?
Yes, ma'am. Somebody's even saying Nigeria, getting more specific.
And someone is exactly correct.
Names I can't read so well. Right. So if you know the language, or you know the tonal or the spelling format of the language, you can say more specifically a country, but certainly it is true that the name does suggest a setting in terms of a geography. It also gives us a little information again about characterization, because the narrator is actually the grandchild of the person whose name lets us know where this is going to be set.
Exactly.
I think when you think of the country too a little bit, you then have a little bit of an idea about what the circumstances, why the circumstances might have been suspicious. Somebody's saying in the chat, is it a historical book? And I actually can't tell from this, but it could certainly doesn't rule out it being a historical book.
And so I'll go ahead and reveal who it is, and then we'll move to the next. And so this is the first line of a book called Cack-Handed by a Nigerian comedian, Gina Yashiri. And what happened is, they believe, her Patrice had a husband who had multiple wives, and they believe that the other wives killed her. Because she could have more male children than the rest.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, that's a complicated story. The multiple wives thing, we call that polygamy. And it's illegal in the United States, but it's not illegal everywhere.
Well, in Nigeria, they call it extra hands of help.
Extra.
And a very prosperous man who can afford to have more than one wife.
There you go. There you go.
Yes.
Okay, so number 2, I knew I was sleeping too long. I knew I was sleeping too long. So you want to think about that sentence and wonder, what is the narrator suggesting? And does the sentence, something bad happened? Very good. It is a little bit ominous. Does the sentence suggest anything about, like Tracy asked before, setting? Does the sentence tell you anything about where that might be? Somebody's saying maybe Southern. Is sleeping literal? Awareness of something wrong? Well, sleeping could be literal. The idea about it being maybe Southern is if you accept that the sleeping without a G is suggesting a way of speaking, which could be Southern. But what about the setting? Does that sentence suggest any setting at all? Morning. Morning is good, and morning is time, and bedroom, coming through in the chat, is also a setting. So when you start a book in a bedroom, you know it might be an intimate book. You know it might be a book about being in a household, and the narrator might be warning you about that early, as well as letting you know that they're Southern, as well as letting you know that something bad might be happening.
It also suggests a little bit of a two consciousnesses, because when you're sleeping and you know you're sleeping, you're sort of awake and asleep at the same time.
So that's opening sentence is very rich in terms of voice. Sets you up a lot. And it actually comes from The Good Negress, written by AJ.
And it's a story about a little girl who, when she's actually sleeping right then, her mother's leaving her with her grandmother. So her mother's going back to Detroit after having dropped her off with her grandmother. And she's sleeping, and when she wakes up, her mother is already gone. So that's the bad thing that happens.
And while this is going on, you guys, I'm hoping that I'm going to say my friends, as this is going on, my friends, because it may not be men, and I shouldn't say guys and assume such. That is something I've learned from working with Miss Cicely Tyson. She's very insistent on that. And so while we're working on this, my friends, you should really try to write your own first line, which we'll share later and discuss with everyone. And so the next one is number 3.
The summer. Go ahead.
Go ahead, AJ.
The summer is made for stoop sitting. So you talk about it, Tracy.
And so with the word stoop sitting, what does that tell us? And what is the insight we get from this short sentence?
In a city, yep, that's true. Stoops are a kind of way steps are arranged, and they have a little spot where you can sit on them. Maybe a brownstone, perfect, maybe a brownstone, because stoops are normally associated with brownstones. Somebody's saying Brooklyn point blank, and certainly Brooklyn is a place where you find a lot of brownstones. People have written about brownstones in Brooklyn for many years. It's kind of
a Harlem
trope, and Harlem as well. Yep. And then this first line, of course, gives you the season. And by giving you the season, they're elevating the season. And in terms of voice, this is something you want to think about, because yes, it's hot out there on those stoops in the summer, but a lot of times it's cooler on the stoop than it is in the brownstone, especially in the past. Now most people have some kind of air conditioning. Somebody's writing about communal talking, that a stoop is a communal space a lot of times in literature and on film. So summer is also a communal time. So it's kind of interesting to see how much you can actually set up, even when the words you choose are not so elaborate. And as writers, it's important to learn to assess or evaluate sentences in this way, so that you can pack the same kind of punch in your own sentences.
And so, did anybody guess what excerpt this is from?
The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo.
Absolutely. Who won that?
Denise.
All right, Denise. Excellent.
Elizabeth Acevedo is very popular right now.
Good. She should be.
She should be. Yeah. Do you publish her?
HarperCollins does. Yes, for sure.
Very good. Excellent. Okay, so maybe let's do one more and then go to the writing assignment. What time is it, Andrea? What are we doing? It's 6:30. Yeah, we should do.
It looks like AJ may have cut out for a moment here. And so she may have to log out and log back in.
Do that, Tracy?
Oh, you're back. Good. Okay. So AJ, you got cut out for a minute. So will you?
I'm sorry.
Will you pick one of the others, or you want me to just go to the next one?
Yeah, let's just go to the next one.
Okay. I'm standing on the red railway car that sits abandoned next to the barn.
That was so poetic, Tracy.
Oh, well, then I'm trying to be you, AJ.
Oh, please. So in a desolate area, somebody's saying, desolate is possible. Somebody's also asking on a farm, and barn obviously is a big word that suggests farm. Somebody's talking about agriculture, which barns go with agriculture. But this railway car situation is a little bit of what we call juxtaposition in writing, which is a word you learn in high school, which has to do, yes, out on the countryside, somebody's writing that's real, that the railway car is there and it's abandoned and it's next to a barn. So the railway car is industrial and the barn is agricultural. And so in some way, this farm environment is actually backed up to an industrial environment. So there's some tension there, which presumably the narrative will explore. And what in the world is the person doing standing out there? That sounds a little bit scary, maybe.
Mm. And then abandon, the fact that it's abandoned.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, anybody guess where this excerpt comes from? No, I'm surprised. It's educated.
Really?
Yes. That's the opening line of educated.
Who wrote educated?
Tess Westover?
Tess Westover, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Tara. Somebody's saying Tara.
I'm sorry, Tara.
Yeah, Tara.
Yeah.
You were close. Tara Westover. Huh. That's an interesting beginning. But she's the one that had the whole homeschooling situation. Is she the one?
And went to Harvard.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So she had humble beginnings, is maybe what she's arguing. Okay, so I think I'm just concerned, Andrea, about time, because you wanted to have a writing assignment, right?
Yeah, maybe we could hear some opening lines if folks have already written them, or we can spend a little bit of time to music writing a few opening lines now that we have some fantastic examples.
Yes, and maybe I should say to Tracy that people are guessing some of the other books.
And I saw that, and definitely the fire on high. Yep.
We're gonna
with the fire on high.
that. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so Andrea, I think maybe if we want to give people maybe a few minutes, you can play some music and everybody can just take, here's the assignment. Yeah, establishing voice. Write an opening line that communicates the race, class, and setting of your main character without saying it outright. So that's a challenge. That's a challenge. But we're asking also for you, we're going to give you how many minutes, Andrea?
Let's say four minutes.
Okay, cool.
5 minutes.
Okay, so you're going to have 4 minutes to write one good opening sentence, and then we'll come back and maybe find some of your sentences in the chat. Yes? Okay.
I'm going to do one too.
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna go back up to the very first. We're on our bikes, pink banana seat for her. My mom's vintage 50s for me, sailing through the neighborhood. Wow, I definitely get a feeling from that of energy. And I don't know why I feel like it's two girls on the bikes. I don't know if it's the pink banana seat. Um,
Or just the pink.
mm-hmm. And sailing through the neighborhood, they're finally feeling free.
Yeah.
So Holly, is that the intention?
Yes, it is. Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. The dark evening air hit her face with a chill as she waited for her daughter's teacher to arrive, standing on her aching feet. You know, standing on her aching feet says a whole lot.
Yeah.
She works.
Yeah, that closing phrase is actually extremely riveting. And coming at the end, we have this thing we talk about in writing called the power of the pause. So where you end things, where you put a period or a comma, which is a mini ending, or you end a paragraph, or you end a section, you get this power from the pause. And so putting that at the end of the sentence really is a high energy place for that line. One of the things, though, you want to think about is what we call dangling modifiers. So the way this is written, the dark evening air hit her face with a chill. It's as if the air hit her. And that's not really what you mean. You mean the air chilled her. So you want to work with that a little bit to see how you can get rid of that with a chill. Because the with a chill is almost like, bam, I'm hitting you with a chill. And what you really mean is it was cold. It's also very intriguing, this setup that the mother whose feet are aching is waiting for the daughter's teacher. So it's a little bit ominous, almost like, why is the mother who really should be resting probably waiting for the teacher? What is that about? So it sets up a good question. And Toni Morrison talked all the time about how she wrote about questions that she had. So when you set up a question for the reader, you're doing a good thing. So Tracy, this next one is yours, so I'm not letting you read it. I think I'm going to skip you.
But I think we should skip. Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, nobody's worried about you. No, I'm just kidding. So
well, they shouldn't be.
So Kelsey, the sun shines, the wind blows, I pass death on the corner and turn left. Woo, very cool. Very cool. Death as a capital letter, that really elevates death. It almost makes it seem like death is going to be a character. Kelsey, is death going to be a character?
It's actually mine. My name was accidentally my mentor's name when I entered the thing. So it's actually mine.
So what's your name?
Oh, I'm Althea.
Althea, okay.
Yeah. No,
Okay.
it was actually meant to be a reference to like a statue or like a piece of art that was on a corner, but then the piece of art sort of becomes like almost like a character, but they don't have a role, if that makes sense.
It doesn't, but that's okay because
sorry.
It's okay because you had 10 seconds to explain that. But I just was going to say, you know, capitalization is a real signifier. It really says something important. So when you capitalize something, you're setting up an expectation for the reader. And if it's an art piece, you might want to try to figure out how to make it known that it's an art piece. Or if it's real death and it actually morphs into the art piece, you might want to use a small d. But the sentence as a whole is exciting because the sun is out, which makes you think it's positive. the wind is blowing, and so it causes you to question, well, is it positive? Then when the person passes death, you think, oh, this can't be positive. But then the person has the agency to go past death and turn the corner. So it's a very riveting, jarring sentence, which makes the reader want to read on.
Absolutely. And then I'll read the next one for you to analyze, AJ. Well, what are you okay. When I yell, the window glass shivers and the building feels my ground shaking. My mother's always the one who tells me to give the ground back.
So I love this because the one who tells me, my mother always tells me to give the ground back. So in writing, what you want to do is you want to say the most you can say with the fewest words possible. So when you see little words like that, the one who tells me to, those are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 little words, little one-syllable words. And when you see words in strings like that, little teeny one-syllable words, you want to figure out, do I need all these? So my mother always tells me to give the ground back might work just as well. However, the narrator is yelling, and yelling enough to make the window glass shiver. So that's a big deal. What the heck is going on? Yelling so much that the building feels it. And then the mother has this advice for this narrator, give the ground back. So it almost sounds like a little bit supernatural. Where is Atika? Is that how you pronounce your name, Atika?
Yeah, that's how you say it.
So what's happening with your sentence? Is it, did I analyze it in any way, the way you meant it?
Yeah, it's actually based off of reality. So when I get mad, I get really mad. And my mom's always the one who tells me to calm down. So I feel like she's telling me to give the ground back, or like give this space back, like the way I stole it from when I was mad. And I think that it isn't meant to be supernatural, but I am a huge fan of magical realism. So if I were to create this character based off of myself, I would give her supernatural powers based off of like the way her emotions control her.
Right. So that's a really good response, Atika, that leads back to voice, because Atika is saying this is based on reality. However, I'm a big fan of magical realism. So what she's fond of is coming through her writing, even though she's trying to write reality. So that's what I mean about getting close to yourself. That's how you end up having a voice, because it comes out of you anyway. So very nice.
And then there's something from Ailey.
Ailey.
Yes, your daughter.
That is my daughter.
I never needed to be instructed to syncopate.
Do I need to analyze that? There's alliteration, never needed. There's this instructed word that talks about education, but also saying this is not a person who needs to be educated about syncopation. And syncopation is a rhythmic way of handling music, and a rhythmic way of handling music that is not straightforward, not on the regular downbeat, upbeat. It's not like a march. It's more like a jazzy or altered way of writing music. So if you don't know the word syncopate, you might look at this sentence and say, well, this person knows how to do something that they didn't need to be taught. And that's a cool thing. And then once you realize that, and so there's some tension in that idea. And tension is very important to narrative, always.
Absolutely.
If you don't have any tension, you probably don't have a story to tell. So Ailey actually gets some tension in this sentence. She lands on a word that not everybody might know. So she's going to have to make some decisions about, am I going to lose people with this word? If you can keep them reading, you're fine.
Mhm.
Okay. Ailey, do you want to say anything else about your sentence?
No.
Did I analyze it halfway correctly?
I think you analyzed it correctly. I wonder, would it make the person reading this sentence know that I was a musician?
If they know syncopate.
Mhm.
So you put a lot of pressure on that one word. Which is
I figured that out, that she was a musician by syncopate, and then it made me want to know more.
cool. Excellent. Okay, Angie, as she lay, you're going to read, Tracy?
Sure. As she laid on the soft green grass, her dark, rich soil eyes sparkled with magic as she looked ahead.
So Angie gets points, just like the person who was had the dangling modifier. Magic is the most beautiful word in this sentence. And so if you think about power of the pause, you might want to try to figure out, how can I end this sentence on magic? Because that's the word that has the most juice in the sentence. So then when I look at after magic, as she looked ahead, then I'm like, oh, where is Angie? Because one of the things about writing is, if what you're saying is already implied, you don't have to say it. So if this person was looking backwards or sideways, you would want to say it. But most of the time, we're always looking ahead. So you might be able to end on magic just by eliminating as she looked ahead, because we kind of expect that people are looking ahead. So that's kind of the way you have to really bring sort of an attention to your writing that says, how can I say what I have to say with the least words possible? So then if we have, as she laid on the soft green grass, so she's very comfortable on this lawn, her dark, rich soil eyes sparkled with magic, period. And now we're wondering, okay, well, what's magic about it? The other thing this person, Angie, might want to think about, dark, rich soil, 3 adjectives to describe eyes. And I don't know, I might drop the soil. Soil is a little bit difficult with eyes, both because the soil is down and the eyes are up, but also you've already said the eyes are dark, and so soil doesn't add much to it. So again, in writing, you want to say as much as you can with as few words as possible. And every time you find words that you can take out, you need to applaud yourself, because you want to take out every extra word. Toni Morrison used to say, I take out every extra the. So words as small as the, you want to just get rid of every extra word, and you want to really encourage yourself to do that.
And so why, AJ, is it important to be economical with words?
Well, this is the way I explain it. I'm not sure everybody would explain it in the same way, but the way I explain it is this. When you are telling a story, you have a million things you have to communicate. Because let's say I'm going to write a story, I'm going to pretend that Tracy is a fictional character. And so I'm going to write a story about Tracy. Well, Tracy is not going to be in that story by herself. She either has a mother or a father or a sister or a brother or a child, or maybe all of them. And she lives somewhere, and she works somewhere, and she does something at work, and she has a certain way she likes to eat. And I have to tell her story, and I have to cover all those things. The truth of the matter is, when you write a short story, you're writing between 3 and 15 scenes. When you write a novel, you're writing between 15 and 150 scenes. So you don't have time to talk about things that are not relevant to your story. You have to make space to give Tracy her family, her place that she lives, her work that she does, and her crisis that she has to deal with in the story. And you have to get that sculptural hair in the story too. So there's just a lot going on. So the economy of narrative requires that you consolidate everything as small as you're comfortable so that you have room to tell all the details and the stories and the storylines and the family members that you need to tell.
And I also think you want to control the reader's focus. You don't want like a word like soil in there that gets them, you know, thinking about, oh, farming or something else rather than being centered there
Right.
in the space of the story.
Right.
And sometimes depending on what the extra words are, they can be distracting.
Right, because when you choose which words you're going to take out, you want to choose the words that you're taking out so that the words most relevant to the story are preserved. And now that you mention it, Tracy, about focus and distraction, Morrison was very big on focus, by the way. I mean, her idea was it takes focus and control to write, full stop, focus and control. But this writer, Angie, is talking about grass and soil. So perhaps those two go together in Angie's mind, but by attaching the soil to the eyes, it distracts from whatever the soil might have to do with the setting, which is where the grass comes in. Does anybody have any questions? Or should we just go on? Or where are we, Andrea? What's the story? Should we keep going?
Yeah, I think we can take questions in the chat or out loud as you all continue to break down and talk.
Okay, let's do these 1, 2 more. And if you have questions, type them or do a hand raise or something. So Zainab, she splashed water quickly on her face and sighed deeply as she stared with a blank expression in the mirror. So for this one, stared with a blank expression, that's again a dangling modifier that's created by that preposition with. She actually stares at her blank expression in the mirror, at her own. So as she stared at her own blank expression in the mirror. Splashed is a great word, a great verb. But splash implies quickly to me. So I think you can use splash and get rid of quickly and you're good. And we get from her sighing deeply that she's concerned about her own blank expression. I hope that she's going to go up from there. So many people are like losing it in the pandemic that this sentence actually makes me think of how people are struggling in this pandemic. Zainab, am I saying your name right? Can you hear me?
Yeah, Zainab. Yeah.
Zainab, thank you. So am I understanding what you're communicating?
Yeah, I think you said it very well, like in the last sentence. Like it's kind of just having a hard day, I guess. And then with the pandemic and everything too, it's just every day is the same kind of thing. Yeah.
Cool. So you are actually communicating the kind of stress we're all feeling, but you've completely tied it to action. And that's a sign of good writing, because writing demands action. That's how we know what people are doing. That's how we know who people are, right? The person who slaps you across your face is not the same person who bakes you a peach cobbler, is not the same person who presses $5 in your hand. Those 3 actions suggest very different kinds of behavior. So you're communicating through action the kind of anxiety, and that's very good. Okay, so one more, because I'm not seeing any questions. I'm just keeping going. Oh,
Okay,
wait,
but
here's
I
a
think,
question. Go ahead. Go ahead, Tracy.
oh, I was going to say, we didn't ask Angie if we interpreted her work correctly, and I don't want to, I
Where's
want to
Angie?
make sure she's included.
Thank you. Angie, are you with us? I forget which sentence it was. I'm trying to scroll back.
As she laid on the soft green grass.
Oh, right. Soft green grass. Do I hear you, Angie?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
Tracy's letting me know that we didn't ask you if we interpreted your sentence right.
Yes, you did, and I really appreciate it.
Okay, that was the one where I was saying about magic could be the power of the pause.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mhm.
So I saw a question, so I'm scrolling. How do you feel about a story with a line of dialogue? That's Mary's question. I'm not sure I understand.
I mean,
Like
starting
opening.
a story. Sorry, that was a typo.
Starting a story with a line of dialogue. Tracy, do you want to answer that?
A lot of people say that it's not a good move narratively, and that it's a cheap way to draw people in. I would evaluate that on a project by project basis.
Right.
You know, it depends on what is said. If it's something that's cliched or generic or predictable, that's not going to draw a reader in. But if it's something completely evocative, you know, but not trying to be provocative with, like, you know, I've seen it with curse words and different things like that, and people opening up complaining, and I don't find that appealing. But, you know, sometimes there can be a riveting line that's just like, what? And so how do you feel about it, AJ?
I think, you know, most of my ideas about writing are related to trying to deliver a story by writing it. Tracy actually is a receiver of stories. And so her strategy for evaluating is slightly different because she doesn't have to construct it. She has to look at it and say, do I understand what is being constructed here? Or can I help this author construct it better so that all the readers beyond me can interpret it? But Tracy brings up a really important point, which is that your job as a writer is to actually control your reader. You want to make it kind of narrow what your reader is interpreting from what you've written. Because if the reader has broad latitude, they can interpret you in a couple different ways, then actually you don't have your story controlled. You want your story to be easily and almost unambiguously interpreted by the reader. So having said that, I think that's very hard to do with dialogue. Not impossible, but difficult. If you looked at some of the first sentences or remember the first sentences we were going over, they're delivering setting, they're delivering crisis, they're delivering tension, they're delivering condition. So you need your start of your story to deliver as much as you can, and that's kind of difficult to do with dialogue. Again, not impossible, but kind of difficult. So when you start your story, you want to be able to identify, you know, what can the reader learn about the character who's speaking, maybe give some clue about age. The person who wrote about the bikes, you figure those kids are between 7 and 12. And that's great, right? You can tell from the story, nobody's talking about age, but you can tell from the sentence that this is a certain age. Maybe dates you could suggest. The first concert I ever went to was the Jackson 5. Well, that's a date, right? If you start the story that way. And it's also an age. It suggests nobody goes to see the Jackson 5 unless you're like 13, right? You wouldn't think the person would be 35. So that's what you're trying to deliver when you construct your first sentences. And again, that's kind of tough to do in dialogue, though not impossible. So I hope, Mary, I answered your question.
Yes, terrific. Thank you so much. Really great.
You're welcome. I'm not. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Do you want me to read Amber's?
Yes, because I don't see other questions. Okay.
Oh, or you see another question? No. Okay. First, the checklist: 4 new sharpened pencils, 1 pristine pink eraser, 1 black pen, one blue pen, and one protractor, all fit inside a clear pencil case. That tells us a lot about who the person is.
Mm-hmm. I can't really find, oh, here it is. I remember reading it. So really, really good details. And actually in writing, there's a lot of functionality to the list, which is what this is. Not every list needs to be announced, but this is perfectly fine, the checklist. So we presume that this person has a checklist that they're trying to fulfill, like a school supply checklist. This clear pencil case that actually fits a protractor, that's almost a date, because I'm not sure people use protractors so much anymore. I haven't seen one in a long time. Of course, I haven't been around a kid in 8th grade in a long time. But this is almost a date. Does anybody else get the sense that this checklist is associated with a time maybe 15, 20 years ago? Anybody?
I think so, because it's pencils and erasers. It's not, electronics.
Right.
And that the person is an engineer or studying to be, or not an engineer.
No, because protractor is a very basic tool.
Oh, no wonder I failed that class in high school.
No,
I thought it was an advanced.
A protractor is, they're plastic.
Yeah.
And the clear pencil. This is like a school supply list for like an 8th grader or a 9th grader, something like that. Because also the pristine, you have to put it all together, which is what the list is about. The pristine pink eraser, no engineer would care about.
I mean, like when you're in school, studying to be that, not an actual one.
But anyway, I love that list. Now, whose was it? I'm sorry.
Yeah, give us insight, Amber.
Yeah,
Amber Lovelace.
Yes, Amber.
You are right. It is a 9th grader in 1986. And so he is starting. It's his first day at a brand new school, and he was bullied at the last school, and so he's kind of made this list as a way to protect himself by going in and saying he's got everything ready.
Very good, very good. And so, quite honestly, Amber, when you mention it, I can almost understand the anxiety, but I wish that there was just something in the sentence to lend the anxiety. Like almost if, let me review my checklist again, :
Okay.
That way the anxiety would be there. You also want to watch that capitalization after the colon. You want to either capitalize everything or just do a small f.
Okay. Thank you.
Because capitalization, especially now where we have capitalized tweets and capitalizing is yelling and all that, it really is, if you capitalize one word, it elevates the word. So that 4 looks like the other young lady's death. I think it was Zainab, where she saw death and turned the corner. So if you're going to capitalize, you have to have a really good reason.
Okay. Thank you.
And I'll read Victoria's.
Okay.
As I opened the French doors to the balcony, the sunlight hit my caramel skin, and for a moment I felt euphoric. I wasn't alone in the dark anymore.
Oh, you read so poetically. So if Victoria was in my class, I would say that's 2 sentences. Because
yes,
you're supposed to have 1. So as a writer, you really have to be strict with yourself. But anyway, French doors makes total sense to be capitalizing because French doors is a thing and the F is capitalized. I opened the French doors to the balcony. So that kind of suggests a little bit of poshness to me. I don't know if it's supposed to, but French doors to the balcony, it's a little posh. The sun, that's not a bad thing. I'm just identifying what I'm interpreting from the sentence. The sunlight hit my caramel skin, and for a moment I felt euphoric. So that's the sentence I'm going to focus on. Euphoric, again, is a great word. You're using it with the power of the pause. Euphoria is a beautiful, happy thing. And hey, if you can open French doors to the balcony, I bet you would feel euphoric, especially in the sunlight. But here's the thing. And Victoria gets a lot of points for bringing this up for everybody. When we are talking in first person, right? I felt euphoric. I wasn't alone. When you're talking in the first person, you don't describe yourself in terms to communicate to the reader. None of us walks around saying, oh, my espresso skin, oh, my caramel skin, oh, my beautiful. That's not the way we refer to ourselves. And so when you write first person, if you want to be believable, you can't be describing yourself to the reader. Somebody would actually have to come to you in a first person story. That is, another character would come and say, you are a beautiful color of caramel. And that's the only way we could get that information, from a person saying it to the first person narrative. The first person doesn't walk around describing themselves. And so that's basically talking to the reader, and you want to avoid that. So maybe the sunlight warmed me, or maybe you just, I opened the French doors to the balcony, and for a moment I felt euphoric. Because we have to find out that you're caramel from somebody else. We can't find that out from you. Victoria, does it make sense what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Cool. Because if you can register that for the first person, you're going to make yourself not just Victoria, but anyone. If you can write in the first person in a way that you don't describe things to the reader, your first person is going to read more authentic, more believable.
Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to go to Kyla's.
Okay.
My cheeks burned pink as the sun shone through the rip in my beach umbrella.
Oh, can you read it again?
Mm-hmm. My cheeks burned pink as the sun shone through the rip in my beach umbrella.
So,
Probably the tear.
Go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
You would say tear?
Mm-hmm. Rather than rip.
So I'm not sure if Kayla's trying to say that because the umbrella was ripped, that's why I guess this person got a sunburn. But so Kayla, can you tell me for me? Can you tell me whether there's supposed to be a sunburn because of the rip in the umbrella?
Yes, that's what I was thinking.
Huh, okay. So I'm going to introduce a very big word. Tracy, do you know this word verisimilitude?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know why you're laughing. But verisimilitude is a big, long word. Once you know it, once you've heard it, hopefully you always remember it. But really, verisimilitude is when physical things happen in your narrative. You have to try them to make sure they actually could happen. And it's really about physical things. So in Kayla's line, the physical thing that's happening is that the narrator is getting sunburned. Now, typically in student stories, what'll happen is they'll have somebody jump out a window and run home or something like that. And I'm like, what floor is the window on? And they'll say second. And I'm like, so can you really jump out of that window and land safely and just run across the street home? That's a physical action. Verisimilitude, most of the time you can't. Most of the time you turn your ankle or break your leg or, something. So the verisimilitude would be a problem. This narrator getting burned on the cheeks through a rip in a beach umbrella is just implausible to me. It doesn't seem like it would happen through a beach umbrella. Now, I'm not that experienced with beach umbrellas, so I could be wrong, because I don't like go sit on the beach and get sunburned. That's not my thing. So,
and I think if it's a tear and it's bigger, it could possibly happen.
right, but if it's a tear, are you really on the beach with an umbrella that's torn that big? I don't know. But what I'm trying to say to Kayla is, and everyone, when you create physical realities in your stories, you have to be willing to try them, or, you know, get an umbrella to see if it could really work. Most people make these mistakes with putting characters in cars. Like, they'll put the character in the car and have the character, like, I don't know, making a ham sandwich or something ridiculous that you couldn't really do in a car, right? I turned to my mother and I said, don't talk to me like that. Well, no, you didn't. If you're driving, you don't turn around and start, you know, because your mother, she's going to say, look at the road. So the point being that when you have to examine every physical action and just make sure it works. And if Kayla, you want somebody to be sunburned, especially if you're writing fiction, you can make them sunburned in any number of convincing ways that don't require an umbrella. If the umbrella is important to the story, if the umbrella is getting ready to have a role in the story, then maybe you want to, as Tracy said, use the word tear. But then I think you're going to be burdened with, why is this person on the beach with a torn up umbrella? Because it's just not something I've ever seen before. And certainly it could be valuable to the narrative, but it would have to be valuable to the narrative. Kayla, what's up with the torn up umbrella?
I actually did think about having the umbrella as a part of the narrative. It made me think of something that she is attached to and doesn't want to get rid of.
Cool.
I don't know what the reason behind that is yet, but that's kind of where my line of thinking was.
And so yet is the operative word, because if the umbrella is going to be important, you write the story through until you find out, why is this umbrella important? Why is she so attached? If the umbrella is going to be important, then you could also consider, does she really need to get sunburned, or could she be dragging along this ripped up umbrella and people's reaction to the umbrella? You have many, many options when you're writing fiction, because you're making everything up.
Thank you.
And living in oblivion is not an option.
Well, a truer thing has never been said. Living in oblivion is not an option. So this really sounds kind of like maybe it would be memoirish. Like somebody has actually spent some time living in oblivion and has learned that that doesn't really make sense. Or maybe their brother is living in oblivion and they have learned from their brother.
I think if you scroll a little further down, Yusel pasted it again with the rest of the sentence. 6:41 p.m.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Right?
Living in oblivion is not an option for Poppy, as he reaches for his last dollar and says, "This is your beginning."
Mm.
Is Poppy giving the dollar to somebody?
Yeah, he's giving it to me.
Oh.
And yeah.
Living in oblivion is not an option for Poppy. So Poppy is a specific person, so he would get a capital P maybe. Is that right? Is Poppy a specific person?
Yeah.
Okay, so he gets a capital P. He reaches for his last dollar. So it's missing that the dollar is given to somebody. I mean, we know he's talking to somebody. I would just change reaches for to gives me, as he gives me his last dollar, comma, and says, comma, this is your beginning. Okay. So capital letters and punctuation, very important. So many young writers now, partly because of probably what is or is not being taught in school, but punctuation is like massively important. And it's not as sort of boring and formal as you would think, but it's also something that alerts an editor that you actually are paying attention to what you're writing. I don't know, Tracy, do you get manuscripts that where the punctuation is kind of omitted sometimes?
Well, I'll have to say that ampersand lately, everybody seems to use an ampersand, and it annoys me to, I don't know what end, you know. And punctuation is important in the telling of the story, because it determines how the reader receives the information, and you want to control, like I said, you want to control that. You know, I think writing, and really good writing, I think that one has to be like a master seducer and manipulator, you know, with the words, you know, to move, to control the mind of the reader and their thoughts and where they're going, and to keep them going into reading further. So yes, it's very important. Punctuation is crucial. You can't just,
yeah, you want to spend some time learning about it. And in the chat, girls right now, they're talking about a grammar clinic that they have next week. So I would recommend, you know, do as much grammar as you can. I mean, I talk to my students about writing grammar perfect assignments, and I very rarely get a grammar perfect assignment, but I think my students should be aiming for it. And they look at me like I'm crazy, like, grammar perfect, are you kidding? But no, especially since Word is going to give you a little blue line every time they think it's wrong. So you have a responsibility to address those blue lines. And that's part of, you know, your competence as a writer, learning to punctuate. I use an assignment in my class that I give out unpunctuated. I just give out these words and sentences, and I say, punctuate this. And there are actually two different meanings that come back based on the punctuation. Punctuation is extremely helpful and important. So here's the question. Go ahead, Tracy. Were you going to say something else?
And I think it's important to know what is correct, you know, even though grammar evolves. I think it's really important to know the correct way, so that you know when you're doing something different intentionally, and you'll know what result you're looking for. So that's all I wanted to say, AJ.
Yeah, because sometimes, for example, in The Bluest Eye, there's like these run-on sentences that echo these reading books that people learned to read from back in the day. And there's no punctuation in those run-on sentences because Morrison is trying to say, look how this see Dick, see Jane, see their white picket fence runs together in your head and kind of clogs your mind about who you are. So she's removing the punctuation to accomplish a goal, but she knows what she's removing and why. So Tia Harmon is asking, how soon do you identify yourself in an autobiography? That's an interesting question.
That
How
is.
soon do you identify yourself in an autobiography? Go ahead, Tracy.
I think someone's got to know pretty early on who you are in order for them to continue reading. You know, a lot of people think that, you know, teasing people about what they don't know will make them read, you know, continue reading, but that is not the case, because that involves too much free time. So
no, here's the way. The thing about people do get confused and think that you withhold information from the reader in order to keep the reader reading until you give them that information. That's not the way to do it. The mystery in any story, whether it's a true story or a made-up story, fiction, the mystery is what's going to happen next, period. What's going to happen next? And so you've got to set up actions and activities and scenes so that the reader wants to keep reading to find out what's going to happen next, not what hasn't the author told me, or not what am I going to find out about this character that's going to explain everything, or not are they going to live through the riot, just what's going to happen next. And you have to make your character interesting enough and have your characters doing enough things that are interesting enough that the reader wants to know what's going to happen next. Now, the thing about how soon do you identify yourself in an autobiography? Well, don't forget that book projects are books. And so if it's an autobiography, before you even open the book, you're going to know it's an autobiography because it's going to say, My Story by Tracy Sherrod. So it's Tracy's autobiography. Or if you're Maya Angelou, it says, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, autobiography by Maya Angelou. So there's no secret to the autobiography. It's an autobiography on the cover. And then when you open it, you start reading that person's story and you're like, this is the story I'm reading. So you identify yourself before the book is opened, in other words.
Very true. Thank you so much.
So how do you start your own story, autobiographies, etc.? How does one go about that? Do we have time for this question?
Yeah, I think we take this one last question.
Okay.
Great question.
Yeah. So Tracy, how do you start your own story, autobiographies, etc.? How does one go about that?
Oh, I say start directly with the truth. Start with the truth, the most true thing you know about yourself, I think is very provocative way to begin a memoir.
Memoirs are exceptionally popular right now. And Tracy, by saying start with the most true thing you know about yourself, she's also referencing kind of where we started with, it's your uniqueness that makes your voice. So if there's some truth about yourself that is particularly unique to you, that people will be surprised to hear about, that is a real insight, which is kind of what Tracy's also referencing when she says the most true thing about yourself. As a person constructing a story, you just want to make sure that you start your story in a place that is not cliche, that is not a trope, that is not something that kind of anybody could write. Tracy mentioned cliches earlier in the conversation, and you don't want to be a writer who writes words that other people have made popular. Writers invent cliches. We do not use cliches. And there are cliches even in scenes, in settings, like a brownstone, a stoop on a brownstone. Unless you can really, really work with it, you got to be careful because it's almost a cliche at this point. A person, kneeling down at some fancy place proposing is almost a cliche at this point. So you want to just be careful. My rule is, if I know what I'm going to write before I finish writing it, like I'm writing, it's raining, before I even get any farther, I know I'm about to write, it's raining cats and dogs. Scratch. If you know what you're writing before you even finish writing it, it's a cliche. Don't even bother. Go back and figure out some way to say it that nobody can quote before you're even done.
Don't focus on setup so much, like backstory. Let that all unfold in the narrative. Too many people focus on in the beginning, I was born such and such a date, with a memoir, and you're like, oh, Lord. It's just as bad as the email that says, hi, I'm so-and-so, naming yourself. Okay, I'll get to that at the end.
Yeah, what exactly do you want?
Exactly, let's get there.
Right, and the rules of constructing writing are pretty consistent, right? So I was born on such and such a date. Well, we know you were born because you're writing. So you don't have to tell us you were born. Now you might want to say in 1968, Martin Luther King was shot, but I was an infant. So I found out later, right? So you get the date, you get a little bit of history. The person knows that the narrator's telling you that Martin Luther King is important to them in some way, his assassination. And then we find out you're an infant. But don't tell us I was born in 1968. Just, we know you were born. Let's do something with 1968 and keep moving. If that makes sense to you. I hope we haven't been too much in the weeds. I hope we've given you some, I don't know, you know that expression, in the weeds? It's like when you're too technical, you're like all down there with the worms and stuff, but I don't know. When I was learning to write, I wanted people to tell me stuff about writing, period. I don't want to hear, you know, about your life and your career and your happiness. Just tell me how to write. So that's what I try to offer when I work with people. People are saying,
I think you've done a wonderful job, AJ. And AJ referenced Toni Morrison quite a bit because we're working on a book together that will be published next year in 2021, which is about her relationship and what she's learned about writing and reading and thinking and just being a friend with Toni Morrison.
2021 is already here. It's this year.
I said next year?
You did, but it's this year.
Oh my, look where my head is. In September, we will publish Miss Chloe.
Yeah, we just want to be on the same year publication schedule. You and
okay, good. Thank you for reminding me. I think I missed all the holidays and the New Year. I'll start over.
Okay, so how are we doing?
You're doing wonderful. I want us to take the time, if people feel comfortable, just unmuting themselves and just sharing the praise that we feel to have heard these conversations, to have gotten this critique. If we could unmute ourselves and clap, please, for Tracy and for AJ.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tracy, when is the Cicely Tyson book coming out?
Thank you.
Thank you.
21st.
What?
I think it's the 21st.
21st of this month?
It's the 28th. The 26th, I beg your pardon.
It's the 26th.
The 26th.
Excellent. Well, the Cicely
of January.
Okay, well, Cicely Tyson is a person for real with a voice. So I'm looking forward to reading that this month.
And her voice is phenomenal in the book, you know, and she made sure that we met regularly.
Yeah.
So that I would recognize her voice or not recognize her voice in the manuscript. She was very, you know, she's the way she speaks and thinks is just awesome. And the way these words are laid on the page with the help of Michelle Burford is just phenomenal. I love this book. And I think all of you will, no matter your age. I think you'll really love this book because it covers a terrain of history and lets you know that in life, you have to have convictions.
Convictions, yeah.
You have to have convictions. And it's good to know that early on. So you can select the right ones, right?
Yeah.
That'll guide your life. And she gives you invaluable information on how to live long and to thrive in your truth. So I hope everyone will pre-order Miss Chloe.
Yes.
By AJ, and also go out and buy a copy of Miss Cicely Tyson's Just As I Am.
I just want to say thank you, Tracy, and thank you, AJ. I'm going to check with both of you before I even write any emails in the future because I'm not sure how I should begin anything anymore. I have learned so much. And I'm so excited that also with Girls Right Now with Miss Cicely Tyson, we're doing a special event. They're invited to it, and she has this whole organization has a special place in her heart, and both Tracy and AJ have a very special place in mine. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Yes, we will be having some mentees at a Cicely Tyson event. So mentees who are interested, wait for that announcement coming soon. But we honestly cannot thank you enough. Like Judith, I am also second guessing my emails, but I feel charged to edit them Um, we just thank you all for this wonderful, beautiful, amazing, fruitful conversation, and we appreciate it so much. So thank you, Tracy. Thank you, AJ, and thank you, Judith, for being here with us tonight and engaging with us. I also have to
Andrea,
say, yes,
can I just tell you one thing for your group about emails?
yes,
Use the subject line.
use the subject.
Don't
Yes,
throw away
please.
your subject line. Let the subject line really inform the person what's coming. One quick question about tonight's event, or haven't heard from you, you okay? You know, use the subject line to encourage the person to open the email. If you leave the subject line blank, or you write hello in the subject line, or you write can you help in the subject line, you might not get answered.
Right. You heard it here. This is memoir advice. This is email advice. You cannot get this anywhere else. Thank you so much. I also have to say thank you to the essential workers, to the amazing activists, advocates, politicians out there working so hard right now during very difficult times. We started the Friday Night Salon series open to the public. Many of you may not be a part of the Girls Right Now community, but our programming became open to the public during this difficult time when we needed things to do on Friday night when we're all stuck with each other here in a Zoom room. And it's a great place to be. So thank you for being here. And thank you for all the people who are working tirelessly out there, and we appreciate them. I also have to direct people who don't know that you can be a part of Girls Right Now and support more programming like this. We have an amazing setup of salons, of community chats, of Saturday workshops for our mentees. And we want you to be a part to help us. You can donate to support more programs like this at girlsrightnow.org/give. You can become a Circle member and receive special benefits by going to girlsrightnow.org/circle. And really excitingly, you can become a mentor or a mentee by going to girlsrightnow.org/inquiry. So we encourage you to come to our website, to join us, to be a part. We're so thankful to people like Judith, like Tracy, like AJ, who have joined us, who are part of amplifying diverse voices, who know the importance of stories and of writers. And we really appreciate you all being here with us tonight and joining us in our mission.